Hello, my fellow witches, sorcerers, and other magical practitioners. My name is Aiden, and today's topic is going to be a little bit more serious. And it's going to kind of be a lot more esoteric. Um, so, if you haven't gathered by today's title, we're going to be talking about a little bit about the abyss, but more so what happens when you fail the abyss, when you fail gaining enlightenment, and when you allow the abyss to consume you. So I guess a little context would be, what is the abyss? This is the terminology I'm using, and it's coming from my own personal understanding of the abyss. The abyss is essentially this chasm. It is this chasm that one enters into throughout their life, and it is filled with essentially the shells, the uselessness, the most abhorrent things in it, that humanity can provide. Essentially, it is this place where things are formless, things are useless, things are just very abyssal. It's hard to put into words quite well. But it brings us to our lowest point. Brings us down to our lowest point, the lowest of lows. It destroys us, it completely breaks us down. It is the tower, and in that sense, where the tower will destroy everything. But out of that abyss, you rise up and you grasp onto divinity. You grasp onto divinity and you hold onto divinity. That's essentially a really quick TLDR of crossing the abyss. Plenty of other people have gone way more in depth into it, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're talking about the failing of the abyss, the failing of enlightenment, and what that looks like, I guess. What that looks like and how it affects the person. Because not everyone succeeds in crossing the abyss. Not everyone succeeds in it, and it's something that I think needs to be talked about more. It's not something that a lot of people want to talk about either. Because the nature of crossing the abyss is so... There's not really a right word for it. It's just very touchy. It's very... People have a lot of opinions and thoughts on it without ever actually understanding it or looking into it. So I feel like understanding how we encounter the abyss is important too. We can encounter the abyss in daily life. That's how I've encountered the abyss, and I feel like many others also encounter it this way, especially if they're non-magical practitioners. The abyss manifests in many different ways for many different people. It's very personal. For a lot of people, it usually tends to attack you in specific places. But the abyss is a gateway more than anything else, and you need to work through that gateway. It's not something that I think you're meant to stay in. You're not meant to stay in the abyss. You're not supposed to obsess over the abyss either. Because that's the trick of the abyss. The abyss really tricks you into staying in it. It makes you feel complacent in it, despite its active destructive nature. And also because of this being a grand mystical experience, a lot of people tend to dismiss other people when they talk about it. It's a very, oh, I crossed the abyss. I gained this grand Vegas knowledge, and then it's like, oh, I crossed the abyss, and it's like, no, you couldn't have done that, or whatever. Which also shows a lack of crossing the abyss. Because the point of crossing the abyss is enlightenment, ultimately. Because the abyss forces an ego death, essentially. Well, ego death is a very loaded word, but it does force death. It does force a death of some kind onto you. Um, that also goes into how people encounter the abyss. Some people will manufacture it. They'll try to artificially create the abyss. They'll artificially throw themselves into the abyss instead of naturally waiting for it. And it's something that you really shouldn't do, in my opinion, unless you are ready for it. And most people aren't ready for it for a while. That's why there's a whole operation where you need to get the HGA first. So I have some thoughts about the HGA and the abyss. You need to get the HGA first, and then you need to wait till like you're a certain age and maturity, and you need to have a certain level of stability within your life, and it makes a lot of sense. That's why there's like that whole structured process, and I think that trying to fling yourself into the abyss, especially when you're unstable or a minor or anything like that, is very unhealthy and very dangerous. Because the nature of the abyss is destruction. It is destructive. It is voided. It's that makes sense. It's very voidic. It's kind of a word that I've been using to describe a lot of things recently. But meaning it's in a sense of void. It's this void place in which nothing real exists, and that's the point of it. It conceals so much of divinity with this false reality. And when you push through that, you are able to rend the veil and you're able to see divinity for yourself, and you're able to grasp onto it and hold on to it and bring it back into your waking life. And that's also a hard part. It's the waking back up. People can throw themselves into the abyss easy peasy, like super easy. Just take that oath, throw yourself in, have fun. But getting out of it, touching divinity and getting out of it is extremely hard. And many people will find themselves flung and cast into the abyss, and they won't be able to make it out. Or if they do make it out, they never got divinity. And the abyss, what it does to you is it changes your entire perspective on life. And so obviously it can cause a lot of chronic depressive issues, though crossing it can help a lot with that. It's interesting, when you cross it, you lose a lot of the effects of the abyss. Assuming successful, though you are never really the same, and it can cause a lot of instability. But when you cross it, you are essentially flinging yourself down into the sewage of human thought. And it can give you a lot of delusion. I think the biggest delusion that I see people get from it is the delusion of the separation. It is the illusion of separation, rather. This belief that the mind or spirit, the body, and the soul are separate somehow, that God is over here, but you're over here. It causes a lot of duality, a lot of dualism within your thought process, because it conceals divinity and it keeps you away from it. It keeps you as far away from it as possible, which is why you have to cross it. And it also can hyper intensify your sense of self. So instead of killing the ego, it enhances the ego by filling it with these ideas and thoughts. And yeah, this just really destroys how you view things and how you process things and how you understand the world. And it's honestly a very complex process to get through. So it's understandable why many people come out of it with a tower moment instead of a star moment, if that makes any sense. But people will fling themselves in and they will be in constant state of the tower instead of getting that enlightenment, instead of getting that understanding, that deeper investment into divinity. They lose that and they lose sight of everything. Now with the abyss, as I said before, it comes in many forms and it appears to you in many different ways. For me, it has appeared always in my waking life instead of in some vision meditation or within an active attempt to cross it. I mean, it's very telling that um, that I have this relationship with Babylon. It explains that a lot. Um, because even before I even touched Thelema, or even knew what Thelema was, I had a vision of Babylon. So, and that vision ended up leading to my first crossing, I guess, because we have lots of crossings of the abyss. Um, we don't cross the fullness of it. Like, a way to look at it is there's little fissures in the ground of the abyss, and when we can cross over those, not easily, but we can cross over them. Versus the abyss, the grand abyss, essentially, the fullness of the abyss. These little fissures are tests towards the fullness of the abyss. And they are definitely 100% the abyss. They're not separate from the abyss. They are fully abyssal. They are aspects of the abyss that appear in our lives and we have to cross through them. I have been able to cross it several times. I have not. That I can't even imagine the fullness of the abyss if those are the little fissures I had to cross through. And a lot of the metaphors used to explain crossing the abyss do make a lot of sense in retrospect as well. Um, but it's always an uphill battle, and it's not about that everyone can win. Some people will fall into the abyss fully and lose themselves to the madness of the abyss. They will lose themselves and delude themselves into thinking that the abyss is all that there is, that the separation is all that there is, that there is no real way for us to touch divinity. It deludes us into thinking that a lot. It enforces that separation. Um, that's the trick of the abyss. It doesn't want you to succeed, but you have to succeed, and that it becomes a whole battle essentially. But it's a battle that can't be won with conquest. It's a battle that has to be won with love. Because pure will alone will not help you, but will combined with love will lead you to truth. Because love is the foundation of will, and without love there is no will. Will is pointless and hollow without love. And it's the love of God that you are seeking, so you need to treat yourself with the love of God. And you treat the abyss with the love of God. Because the dweller of the abyss, Karanzan, you need to treat it fully with love. You need to treat him with love and fully embrace him. You need to embrace the abyss so you can escape it, essentially. And in my experience, these little fissures of the abyss that pop up in your life, they will put you through so much, but you will come out so much stronger and enlightened. Because as many of you may know, I was raised hardcore Catholic. Catholicism was very prevalent in my life, and I was really hardcore into it, like very deep into it. I was doing hardcore Christian mysticism, but I was deluding myself the entire time. I essentially, in a way, that was what brought me into the abyss, was doing that hardcore mysticism, doing that obsession with God, essentially. And because of the lies that were fed to me, I was incorporating that into my mysticism, and I wasn't really working with any real mysticism system. I was working with what the church provided me and what I cobbled together from occult texts that I read. And that brought me to delusion. It brought me to a lot of really bad places. And because my identity was rejected by the church, it became a rejection of myself that I internalized and turned that into rejection of myself by God. Essentially, God rejected me. That flung me into the abyss. that threw me headfirst into the abyss, and that's how I ended up crossing it. I ended up meeting someone, and I really liked that person, and that person really helped me to get out of it. Um, it wasn't. It was really myself more than the person. It was more the person made me realize more things, and made me realize that God is bigger than what the church labels him as. And that gave me my first grasping of divinity. It was absolutely destructive. I had a complete destruction of self. My entire identity, the entire way I viewed myself was completely destroyed, and the way I viewed the world was gone, which is extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful to be able to see this world that you essentially thought you knew, and then have it open up further, have a veil be torn, and then lifting up your own veil to see so much more out there. That person, they opened me up to a lot of things, and that also ended up sending me into my next abyss. I mean, I'm constantly coming up with these fissures now, more often than not, possibly because of the mysticism and because I essentially needed to keep coming closer to that, and with Babylon being hugely important and significant in my life. Because as I said before, she appeared to me in vision before I even touched Thelema, before I even knew about Thelema. When you realize the influence Babylon has in your life, it kind of changes and reshapes the way that you perceive things. Because Babylon has led me through a lot of my life, it also means I have encountered the abyss many, many times. The abyss will reoccur and appear over and over in your life, and conquering it and getting past it, rather, is essential. But when you conquer it, you're not really conquering it by brute force. You're conquering it more with love. Because love at its core goes beyond just the emotion that you feel when you're around someone you like. It goes beyond that. It's something far deeper. And that love and compassion that you feel, you need to feel that for yourself. You need to feel that for yourself, and through that you will be able to cross the abyss. When you come out of the abyss, you will also realize the unification of everything. How everything fits together into the world, and how everything has a place and everything is right, and you have a place. The hardest part is reintegrating back into the world as yourself. Because once you leave the world, you end up experiencing things beyond normal human comprehension, and things that other people may never experience in their lives. That's also the danger of the occult, is isolation. And I'll probably do a whole video on that, but you need to be able to return to the world. You need to be able to reincorporate yourself. Before enlightenment, it's chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, it's chop wood, carry water. You're just enlightened now. Nothing changes. That's the hardest part, is you have to be able to reintegrate into normal everyday life. Mystical experiences can completely disrupt your life, and the abyss especially can completely strip away everything that you thought about the world at one point and completely destroy it. It is inherently destructive, but you will find a way out of it. You will find a way to see the world again, and through this abyss you will be able to rise out of it, grasp onto divinity, bring it back down with you into the regular waking world. So thank you all for watching. I do hope this was helpful and insightful in some way. If you would like me to elaborate further on any of these points, leave a comment down below. And I thank you all for staying with me all this time. It's been very hard recently, but I'm very grateful for all of you. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.